We are living in an era where filmmaking is the most accessible it has ever been in human history. Everyone now has access to incredibly high quality cameras in their pocket, and there's no gatekeeping, nobody's sharing secrets, and people are out there creating. And now competition amongst filmmakers is insane because filmmaking is now democratized. And because the playing ground has leveled out, I would say that right now is actually the most difficult time to have a career as a filmmaker, but also the easiest time. It's difficult because of the competition, but it's easy because it's so accessible and the barriers to entry are extremely low. So with that being said, the first most important thing you need to know to become a full-time filmmaker is that you need a Every day I open up Instagram, I go on YouTube, I see the most creative content I've ever seen. And now competition amongst filmmakers is insane because filmmaking is now democratized. And because the playing ground has leveled out, we're now seeing some of the top legacy filmmakers go head to head with this new young generation of filmmakers. Whether it's an old school legacy filmmaker competing with a new up and comer at the Oscars, or in commercial jobs, you'll see legacy directors competing with a new young hot, poppin' director, or even in music videos, right? There's a shift. Like the playing ground is way more level than it was before. And I would say that right now is actually the most difficult time to have a career as a filmmaker, but also the easiest time. It's difficult because of the competition, but it's easy because it's so accessible and the barriers to entry are extremely low. You can go out tomorrow, shoot something with your iPhone, edit it on your phone, release it next week, and it could change your life overnight. Like, that's the world we live in today. Alternatively, you could shoot something 1,000 times and it might look great, but it may not stick. And so that's the difficulty, is that sometimes it's unpredictable, and it's just because we are saturated with so much insanely great content from so many insanely talented filmmakers, and it's only going to get more insane. For me, I started out in the Canon 5D Mark II era. For those who don't remember, the 5D was the shit. That was like the camera of the century. Like, now I think the equivalent of that is maybe like the FX3, like the Sony FX3. But our FX3 was a 5D Mark II. And then there was, the Canon Rebel T3i, T2i. Like, that's the generation that I kind of came up in. And I remember the Red camera was just coming out. The Alexa was still new. All these cameras were new and expensive. We didn't have HD cell phone cameras. We had like shitty, the iPhone was only around for a few years. The camera sucked. The barriers to making professional looking content was still pretty high. Like, it wasn't on a consumer or even prosumer level. So there was a gap. It was like the hobbyists and then the professionals. But we've kind of began to fill that gap. So now we're like meeting in the middle where everybody is like a semi-professional now. And it makes it exciting, but it makes it kind of difficult for people to make a living as a filmmaker. For some people, it's very easy to make a living, but for others, it's difficult. And with that being said, today, I want to share how I think people can make a living as a full-time filmmaker right now in 2025. And I'm also going to talk about my experiences and how I've made a living as a filmmaker full-time, and how I think it could be doable for someone like you. The way I came up is going to be a little bit different than how you might come up if you're like a student, or if you're a little bit younger and you're new to the scene. But some of the principles still apply. There's still a lot of crossover between the principles that I came up with versus the principles that you're going to be coming up with if you're someone young out there and you want to jump into this industry. So with that being said, the first most important thing you need to know to become a full-time filmmaker is that you need a portfolio. And I know that sounds very obvious, but I want to explain what exactly that means and why you need that, right? So the way the filmmaking world works is generally, for a lot of, commercial or even music video content, anything in the branded space, anything that's not like a TV show or a movie, a lot of directors are signed to certain companies. And in order to sign to these companies, you need to have a body of work that, that company resonates with. And so when you sign to a production company, the job of the company is to basically connect you with their sales reps, and their sales reps go out and they try to sell your work, right? And so if you don't have a strong enough body of work, or a body of work that they feel like they can't sell you with, then you're not going to be able to work. You're simply not going to be able to work, right? And so in my opinion, you should really first determine what world you want to go into. If you want to get into music videos, that path is going to be a lot different than if you want to do Chips Ahoy cookie commercials. You can't show that client your music videos and expect them to be down. It's like, in rare cases it'll work, but in a lot of cases they're going to want to see cookies on your reel, and vice versa. Like if you make cookie commercials, you can't just expect to get, a music video with a really cool artist. It's just not going to happen unless the commercial is just absolutely bonkers and it's like not like your traditional cookie commercial. You get what I'm saying? And so the first thing you need to ask yourself as a filmmaker or an aspiring filmmaker is, what do I really want to get into? Kind of pick almost like a niche or like a market, and then build a portfolio around that market. And you could even diversify. If you don't know what that is, try different things. Like what I would recommend is to basically get in with your friend who has a band, or work with this up and coming rapper, offer people to do free work. If you want to get into commercials, shoot a spec, find a brand you like, go out, shoot a spec. You could do it on your iPhone. You could do it on, an FX3. Like I said, there's so many options now to shoot something and make it look pretty damn professional. So I would go out there and just create like proof of concept, mini films, mini shorts, commercials, music videos. Figure out what you like, and then you can kind of decide what path you want to go from there. When I was coming up, and this kind of leads me to just talk about what I did, because I really chose the music route. I loved music. I love music videos. And I was like, man, I got to jump into this scene because it's something I'm super passionate about. So when I was coming up, all I did was I offered my services for free. I reached out to people on Facebook, on email back then. That was like the main way to reach out to people. This is like before DMs, and we would drive out to Hollywood like every week, drive out to LA every week. Sometimes we'd leave at like 2 a.m. to go to a show, shoot a concert, and we would just capture as much content as possible and we'd send it to the artists. We'd send it to the artists, their management, their teams. We basically were trying to build a network around these musicians that we liked. We did that by offering free services, because who's going to say no to free services? I mean, if you're like a really big artist, good luck. But we weren't targeting the big artists, We were targeting artists who were maybe not high up on the totem pole, a little bit lower. Maybe some of them were independent, or some of them were like signed to big artists. Those are the artists we were going for, And I think building those relationships with like the smaller artists helped us eventually get to the bigger artists that we wanted to work with. I think once you kind of decide, okay, I like music videos, I like commercials, then you gotta find your sense of style and figuring out what your voice is. The only way you can find out what your voice is if you keep shooting things. The main way you can find your voice is to do narrative work, do work that you're passionate about. Even if it's a spec or a music video, try to infuse, some of yourself in there. Create some stories about your life, or maybe, some vignettes or moments that are personal to you. And soon you'll be able to develop a visual style. And then from there, once you do that and you build a portfolio, then you're able to hopefully, maybe so, find representation. But it all starts with a strong portfolio. In my opinion, once you figure out your voice, and let's say you're still not getting signed, just keep shooting. I like specs. I think specs work. I've seen it firsthand work. And even at this point in my career, like 13 plus years deep in my career, having worked with some of the biggest artists and brands, like I'm still out shooting stuff on my own. I'm still doing, small passion projects. I'm still shooting specs. My goal is to constantly challenge myself and grow as a filmmaker. You're going to be your best when you're starting out. Your filmmaking skills, your taste, your sensibility, like all these things grow with you the more you go out and film. So all you got to do is just get out there and shoot. Stop being scared. Stop sitting around and just shoot. And by the way, I need to tell myself that too, because sometimes I get scared and I kind of like have reservations, but I'm trying to tell myself that I need to keep shooting too. Even after doing this, like I said, for 13 plus years, I still have to give myself those reminders. As a filmmaker, you are always growing, you are always evolving. So don't think that, you're going to hit a certain milestone and you're like, yeah, I'm good. That's not how it works. Filmmaking is a lifelong journey. So if you really want to do this, be prepared for the journey and be prepared for the ride, because it is very, very long and it will test you a lot. Now, some people are able to get freelancing jobs pretty quickly. Maybe someone finds their Instagram, maybe someone sees a short film they like, maybe there are some good referrals you get. But for other people, it's not easy to start getting work as a freelancer, because ultimately at the end of the day, most of us are freelancers. Whether we're directors, cinematographers, editors, et cetera, we're usually freelancers. There are full-time roles at certain companies, but they're very few and far between. So if you're struggling to find work as a freelancer, it's okay to have a job while you're figuring out the freelance life. Don't be ashamed of having a job, whether it's a desk job or doing Uber Eats or whatever. It's not put your fucking ego aside, man. Put your fucking ego aside. Seriously. Put it aside. Figure out what your long-term goals are. You don't have to work as an Uber driver forever. You don't have to work this desk job forever. But figure out your goals. Figure out what you want to do. Create steps for yourself, okay? And so you have a plan. And you can tell yourself, okay, I'll work this desk job for 6 months, or I'll work this desk job for 2 years. And during this duration of time, I want to shoot 2 short films. I want to shoot, 2 or 3 specs. I want to get a couple music videos. And then let's see what happens from there. Sometimes it's better to have something that pays your bills so you can focus on being creative and being, following your passion. Because if you're always stressed, it's going to strip away that creativity from you. I've been there myself. Sometimes I'm so worried about work that I get extremely stressed and it makes me uncreative. It can lead you to this constant loop of uncreativity, and you don't want to be there. You do not want to be there. You want to feel secure and you want to feel excited and motivated to go chase that next big thing. Now, for filmmakers, a new opportunity is emerging with content creation. The idea of a creator has evolved a lot over the years. First we had the influencer, but now the term creator is so interesting because a creator, in my opinion, is more than an influencer. A creator is not only great in front of camera, but they also have large audiences and they can shoot and edit really well. Some creators are phenomenal filmmakers. And so what's happening is there's an appetite now for creators. So this is a new world. This is not the traditional, way of getting signed to a production company and getting jobs that way. This is a whole new world of its own where, let's say there's a brand out there like Sprite. Let's say we have Sprite and they're doing a commercial job traditionally for $300,000. Well, sometimes a brand like Sprite might say, hey, you know what? Instead of doing this massive commercial for $300,000, we're going to outsource brand videos to 6 creators for $50,000 each. So we're essentially going to get 6, little commercials for the price of one big one. And it's going to have a way larger audience because these creators have massive followings. These creators are talented, just as talented as traditional commercial directors. They can convert and sell more product. So content creation is actually very interesting. And the idea of the creator is interesting because it's providing this new opportunity for brands to get more exposure, but also for the everyday person to be able to, build a career out of it. And it's becoming a new advertising model. I think if you're looking for something that's a little more future-proof, I think being a creator might be a little more future-proof than a traditional director. However, with AI coming, I don't even know how long the creator thing will last. I don't know anymore. I really don't know, but I still think that there's quite some time before we implement AI just because I think people like humans. While you could fabricate stories about people with fake, AI influencers, I still don't think that will resonate with real people because at the end of the day, it's fictional. It's fiction, People still like real humans. And I think while I am worried about maybe, AI becoming an issue for creators in the future, I don't think it might be as bad as I'm imagining it, at least not in the near future. Next, the next opportunity you can take to become a full-time filmmaker is with editing. Content is king. We all know this. Every brand, every influencer, every celebrity, every musician, every startup, content is a necessity now. It's not a, maybe we'll do content. It's like we have to do content, right? So editing has become this really interesting career path because people can work with you remotely. You don't need to shoot the footage, and footage is so easy to shoot. Like now clients could film stuff on their phones, send you the footage on Dropbox. You can edit it and deliver something to them tomorrow. So you can turn around videos pretty quickly depending on how complicated the edit is. And you can get a constant flow of this because people don't need to rely on fancy equipment, to capture content. So if you're editing, like there's a lot of different opportunities now in the editing world. It doesn't have to just always be movie and TVs or big commercials or big music videos. It can just be content. And I think if you're looking to make a full-time career as a filmmaker, like editing is a great route. It's a great path to take. It's something that you can master, and it can pay your rent easily. It can pay your bills easily. You just got to master editing, pacing, captions, maybe some cool little effects. I think, you can make a full-time career. Like imagine getting a few clients on retainer to edit their content every month. You could easily make, get a few clients paying $2,000, $3,000. Boom. That's literally a full salary. That's totally doable in my opinion. You just got to learn the skills, build a portfolio for editing, and then find the clients who are willing to pay. It's going to take some time, but it's doable. The next opportunity for filmmakers to make a full-time living is licensing your footage to stock footage websites. Now, this path is way more long-term. Like you're not going to be able to just, upload a shit ton of footage to these stock footage websites and expect to make, money immediately, right? Utilizing sites like ArtGrid, Blackbox, and Film Supply, they can allow you to build passive income, especially if you're filming and you have a shoot and you might have leftover footage. This requires you to have very well curated footage, and it requires you to have patience because not everybody's going to want to buy your stock footage every day, right? So to me, I look at this more of like a really cool ultimate way of building passive income over time. But I also think it's going to require the most amount of time because you need to set aside the time to shoot. You need to set aside the time to upload, and you need to have a large library of footage if you actually want to make money from it. I know people who are making good passive income from stock footage, but they've had to build a library. So while I think this could be a great way to make a full-time living as a filmmaker, I think it's something that will take a lot of work. So this is more for the person maybe who wants to build some passive income over time. I think this is probably a better opportunity for you. But hey, if you want to go hard and you want to make this a full-time thing, go out there, shoot people, get some B-roll, get some drone shots. If you're in a metropolitan area, go get some shots of buildings. If you're in a rural area, go shoot some nature, go shoot some, some farms, whatever. Like there's always footage people need. So wherever you are, go out there and shoot that shit and upload it, and let's start making some money, man. Let's start making some money. Now, the next way to make money and make a full-time living as a filmmaker is to sell digital assets. Now, I am not really a big fan of this. And let me explain what a digital asset is. So a digital asset is kind of like what it sounds like. It's anything that can be sold digitally. So traditionally it's ebooks, courses, softwares, stock footage is a digital asset. And what I hate about this is that the industry has become very saturated with a lot of bullshit. The digital marketplace for film has become so saturated with bullshit LUTs, bullshit sound effects, treatment templates, everything just ridiculous, We're extremely saturated, right? While I think this is an amazing entrepreneurial approach, I'm just very weary on this because I think it takes a lot of ad spend and a lot of patience to actually be able to make a living from this. This is something you have to scale slowly and figure out how to advertise to people. So if you can afford some ad spend, you could set up an e-commerce site on Shopify, launch a digital product, maybe run some, Facebook or TikTok ads, and potentially get sales. If you have a following, you could build an email list. You could, put links in your bio, talk about it in your content if you're a creator. And that way you can acquire customers. And if you have them on an email list, you can give them updates on future releases. So selling digital product is good for people who have big audiences, or good for people who are willing to spend money on ads, And I think that's why I'm kind of on the fence about it, especially because it's a very saturated market, again, with a lot of crap out there. Some stuff is great. Some digital assets are amazing, but a lot of it is a bunch of bullshit, man. I've been through it. I've seen it. I'm like, dude, really? You're selling this? You're selling this horrible LUT pack for like $60? Like, poor kids, man. You're literally to me, it's almost like scamming. Or even courses. I hate courses because courses sometimes provide very little value, or the same amount of value that you can get from watching YouTube for free. So it bothers me. I feel like some people are extreme opportunists. And while I think it's great to be an opportunist and it's great to be an entrepreneur, I think it's also good to have integrity. Don't sell bullshit, especially if you're not a pro at what you do. If you're selling me LUTs and you're not a colorist, or if you're not a cinematographer and you don't even know what you're doing, I'm not going to buy those LUTs from you. So competition is tough. It's a very crowded space, but there are still opportunities. And that's why I wanted to include it in this episode, because I do think it could help some people make money, and it could make you a full-time living if you really are passionate about it and you stick to it. Let's talk about myself. For me, I came up in music videos. So I spent over a decade building my portfolio and became a music video director. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. My friends and I, when we were young, we would just go out, shoot concert footage. We'd shoot behind the scenes videos and even free music videos for those artists that we really liked. We never aimed high. Like I said, you can't expect to work with Taylor Swift if you don't have a portfolio. If you don't have anything to show for it, don't expect to work with the best, right? And so I took the long route. I grinded it out and I worked my way up to be able to work with a lot of the artists that I have worked with today. It took time, it took patience, and it took me building my portfolio. So I went from indie artists to big label artists, and eventually, I had enough consistent work to be able to make a full-time living from this. As a freelancer, you're going to have your ebbs and flows. Some months, you're going to make amazing money. You're going to be like, oh my God, I'm freaking rich, right? And then some months, like during the holidays, it's very slow. And so understanding this as a full-time freelancer, I had to master the art of saving and also the art of investing. So eventually what I did with a lot of my savings was not only did I put it into stocks, ETFs, and crypto, but I also used a lot of that money and I invested it into a side hustle. So now I run an e-commerce store on the side, and that just gives me a little bit of side income. And it's something that I built. I built a little e-commerce company. We sell certain products. I'll explain what that is in a future episode, but it's like a side hustle now. So while it's not fully passive income, it's more guaranteed because I'm able to just pay myself a little salary from that every month. And now I'm just trying to figure out more ways, to give myself that consistency by leveraging the money that I have made from freelancing. You see what I'm saying? So I think when you make money from freelancing, try to find ways to use that to invest and grow and create stability for yourself, because your energy is going to be a lot different at age 20 versus age 30. In this new chapter of my life, I don't have the same kind of energy or patience to do the bullshit I was doing at 18. It just happens, you grow out of it, and that's okay. And at this point in my life, I would rather have stability. So I could just focus on my true passion projects. I could focus on my, my relationships with my loved ones, and just be able to create with purpose. I want to create with purpose. I want to do this podcast. I want to create movies. I want to do things that actually, give me life. So if I can create stability for myself, then I could put all my energy or more of my energy into doing things that I really love. I think the most important thing in freelancing, the goal is to make as much money as possible and to buy as much time back as you can. Buy your time back, because again, if you buy your time back, you can focus on creating instead of worrying about money, because being strapped for cash can mess with your emotions, and it can really take you out of your creative zone. So yeah, that's it. This is my guide on how to be a full-time filmmaker. This might be a series I continue in the future just because there's so many more opportunities than what I said in this episode. But I hope this is a good starting point, especially for those of you who may not know how to get your feet wet in the industry. You know, there's so many different paths to take. There's not necessarily one single blueprint on how to do this. You can study different people you like. You can study myself, and throughout my episodes, I'll keep kind of giving you more stories and anecdotes on how I built my career. I hope you took good things away from this, and I hope it inspires you in your filmmaking journey, This was really an episode more for filmmakers. So I apologize if you're here and you wanted to hear, things about other parts of the creative industry, but this one was more about something that I really know a lot about, and that's filmmaking, that's content creation, things of that matter. So, yeah, that's it, y'all. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Please, by the way, don't forget to subscribe on all the platforms you're listening on, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, whatever you're listening or watching on. I really need your help. I'm really trying to get this show ranked higher. I'm trying to get, more ratings. So even if you're on Spotify, you can give me 5 stars, or even Apple, or give me a thumbs up, leave some comments. Anything you can do to engage with the show will really allow me to grow it and allow me to produce more content, because right now I'm literally a one-man band. Like, I wish I could show you the room around me. It's empty. It's just me. I set up the cameras, the lights, everything. I'm doing this myself. And my goal is that I can build out a team so that I can ultimately put out way more episodes, way more content. But right now, I just don't have the time for that, I'm simply limited by time. So if you guys help me grow the show, I can build out my team and make this a huge epic operation, and we could pump out more content. We could help more people like yourself. That's my spiel. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your support. I have so much gratitude being here in this position and just having even just, a handful of people listening. I appreciate you so much. And last but not least, I want to just give one big round of applause to ourselves. Woo. Till next time, peace.